Can you tell us about your testing regimen that you have planned?
You bet. You know, I live on campus as well, and my son is a student here at Colby. So as a parent and also as the president of this college, I know how important it is to keep everybody safe every single day here. So what we're going to be doing is a really multi-layered plan for Colby. Testing is a central component of it, but not the only component of it. We'll be testing everybody prior to their arrival. We'll be testing them 3 times a week when they get here, and then 2 times a week every time thereafter. And the idea that is so important about this is to actually be able to identify people who might be infected before they're actually contagious. That allows us to then quarantine those people, to contact trace, and to isolate other individuals as we need to. And that's going to really make a difference in terms of being able to ensure that when we have the virus on campus, because we're sure we'll have it at times, it won't be spreading.
Have you looked at what's gone on when it comes to students returning to campuses for college sports? And I'm thinking about college football in particular. There had been a number of voluntary workouts. Some teams had been called back in June to start the voluntary workouts. They tested, and testing was a very important component as well. And maybe in the first week, 0 would be positive. They would all be negative. And then 2 weeks later, they had to shut the program down temporarily because there were so many positive results, and the team had to be quarantined. And so, David, you know, what happens when there is a spike on campus if you've got everybody back? How do you quarantine those students properly? And what sort of precautions do you have in terms of taking care of those students?
You bet. It's a great question, Melissa. And what's really important about this protocol that we have in place is that testing is not the only part of it. So we'll have people wearing facial coverings. We have social distancing in place. We're changing the way that we're doing our dining. We've changed the way that we're cleaning our campus. So it is one part of an overall comprehensive plan to be able to ensure the safety of our campus. We have taken a lease for the year on a hotel. And so if students are infected, they'll be in the hotel. We'll be able to give them food, medical attention, allow them to take courses remotely during that time until they can test negatively on multiple occasions. So we have a plan in place that really is designed to be able to ramp up any kind of restriction that's important, depending on what we see in terms of the virus on campus. We're restricting visitors. We're restricting travel. So we're really locking down for the 3,000 members of our community. We are locking it down as much as possible.
How much more is this all costing you? And are you going to be breaking even for the year, this school year?
Well, it's about $10 million investment overall, but half of that is going into the testing. And if we do, we'll see. Breaking even is not the most important thing. What's important to me is being able to ensure that our students are safe and that we can carry out the kind of education that we do in the very best way that we do it at Colby.
I get it. I mean, I get that you want to keep the students safe, and that's number one. But I guess the question really goes to, if you keep running at the school at a loss, eventually providing these students with the best education possible is going to get more and more difficult if there's a budget shortfall.
Well, the good news on this, Melissa, is we've been hearing from almost all of our students and their families, and they're coming back. The vast, vast, vast majority of our students, we're going to have students here enrolled on campus. So we're not seeing a situation where other campuses might be, where their enrollments are dwindling, where people are deciding not to show up. We've had about 30 students who said they're taking a leave for the year. Everybody else so far we've heard from is planning on enrolling.
Kelly, good to see you again. What would your kind of thought process be for high schools, for younger kids, for any sports at those levels who are trying to figure out what to do and maybe don't have your resources at hand?
Oh, I know it's very hard, Kelly. This is where I think the U.S. government really needs to step in and be able to not just say, hey, open or else. It really needs to be thinking about, how do we support you in all this? How can we help you have the testing that you need? How can we put the safety protocols in place? How can we use the best science and the best practices to allow you to carry out education? Because we do not want to see a generation that is left behind. That seems to me like the single most important thing. Sports are great, but that's not the most important thing. We can set those aside. The education is what really matters for these students. And so I absolutely want to see that we have a plan in place right for all of our schools. But this is where the government really needs to step up and help out.
David, the last time we spoke to you was at the end of May. And since then, the pandemic has continued. We've seen spikes in cases across the country. Joblessness has gone up. And I'm wondering, what are you hearing from your student body in terms of their ability to afford tuition as this pandemic has progressed?
You know, we actually have a great financial aid program, so we will meet their full demonstrated needs. So when families have their needs changed...
Have you seen an increase in requests for financial aid?
We have, but not at the level I would have expected, to be honest with you. So we've seen it, but it's been more marginal than it has been sort of fundamental at this point. Many of our students that I will say, though, who are on nearly full financial aid, and many of their families, we're seeing such a divide in the country right now about who's being affected by this virus, and lower income wage earners are being affected the most. And for those families who are coming to Colby, they're already getting a full financial aid program where they're paying very little, zero often, for a family contribution to be here.
David, great to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Green.